Hey, I'm Tanya from Mindstate Coaching, and we are a personal development company, and we work with professionals, entrepreneurs, and business owners. And today I want to talk about how I got into personal development and identity work, and why I know it really, really works, and why I believe every problem you have, whether it's in your business, in your relationships, in your life, is 100% personal. So I moved to Australia when I was about 15 years old for the second time, and my parents were pretty flat broke. We were boarders in a home with an elderly man who had a drinking problem, and I did not think that was a great environment for a 15-year-old girl. I was in year 10 at the time. It's high school here. They call it high school. And I remember thinking that I want to start working as soon as possible. I want to start making some money, one, help my parents, but also help myself, because I didn't see any way out that my parents could possibly think of. So I thought best I start contributing. I decided to do hairdressing because we had a neighbor that lived around the corner from us, and she was a fully qualified hairdresser. She did a course that went for about 12 months, 14 months, something like that. And she seemed to be doing well. And for my 15-year-old self, someone that owned their own car, could afford to buy themselves clothes, some makeup, go out, I thought was doing really, really well. So I decided that is what I am going to do. So fast forward, I completed my course. My parents forked out the money. I don't know how they did it. They must have borrowed from someone or whatever. But anyway, and I did the course, I qualified, and I got my first job. And it was pretty special. I was loving life until I was probably about a month in, and then realized that I am absolutely terrible at hairdressing. And that was slightly scary because imagine that I've left school, I have got my parents into debt to pay for my course, and now I am qualified in something that I don't feel I'm even good at. So 3 months into this first job, I get fired. I wasn't performing, my KPIs weren't up to scratch, and they had to let me go. So I remember I came home and I was telling my parents that, this isn't my fault, and I made up all these other excuses. But deep down, I knew it was me. And all of a sudden, I was terrified because I thought, what's going to happen? Am I going to have to go back to school, which I did not want to by then? I was completely done with school. Have my parents wasted all this money? And it was not good. But anyway, I get myself a second job, and I was working there for about 2 weeks, and I get fired again. So this was in the space of maybe less than 6 months. I was fired twice. And to make matters even worse, the day before I got fired for my second job, I smashed my dad's car and he had no insurance. So I had to catch a taxi to work that day because I thought I could, because I have a job. However, I lost that job and I then walked home. That walk home completely changed my life. It completely changed the trajectory of my life. I had a really, really interesting conversation with myself, and I admitted that it was all my fault. That I walked into these jobs believing I have no experience, I'm not good at what I do. I was there just to make money so that we could live, so we could survive. And I acknowledged that my energy was probably pretty bad, so was my attitude. Not to the people, but just about life in general. My 16 years of life was summed up to, how our situation at the time, how much money we had, where we were living, so on and so forth. So what I did was, on that way home, is I decided that the next job that I walk into, I was going to walk in as a completely different person. Not someone who is, 16 years old, who has no idea what, about hairdressing. I walked in there as somebody who was the best at what I do. Now, I didn't have any extra experience. I didn't go and get any extra training, but I walked in there as somebody who was the best at what I did. Now, that third job, when I walked in that first day, was I uncomfortable? Absolutely. But I'd made a decision and there was no plan B. I wasn't going back to school. I wasn't quitting hairdressing. This is it. This is it. There's no plan B. So I had to make it work. I walked in there and I absolutely blitzed. I found the person that was doing the best in the salon, the most experienced, the one that was making the most amount of money, that had the most amount of clients. And I just made sure that I was doing better than that person. I worked really hard. I was talking to the clients. I was working faster than anyone else. I was selling product. I was doing everything because here's the thing. I knew exactly what I was meant to be doing. I just wasn't doing it because I thought, I don't know how. I don't have experience. I am young. That was what I identified with, and that is what I was doing. But once I changed that identity, like I am the best at what I do, I can be the best hairdresser, the best, person in the salon. I did that and I became that. So fast forward a year. So by this stage, actually, it was probably, I started hairdressing at 16. So I was probably about 18 years old when I started working in this salon, my third salon. And within 12 months, the boss came in and took me into a meeting and said that she is selling the salon and gave me first option to buy. So from the age of 19 onwards, I not only never got fired again, but I've never worked for anybody again. So really interestingly, that was my first step into realizing the power of our mind. The second thing that actually solidified personal development for me was I was up one night late working on different things. I was about 21 by then. And back then, you only had a few channels that you could watch. And so I was watching some infomercials, and this person came on that was literally larger than life. And he started talking in a way that I have never, ever heard someone talk like that before. He was talking about things that I had never heard of, but made complete sense to me. It was like I'd come home. And that person was Tony Robbins. And I've since then had the privilege of going to his seminars and, doing his work. And it is unbelievable. However, I took that and I ran with it. And then I started following other mentors. I started implementing that into my businesses. And I have never, ever, ever looked back. So what I realized through my whole entrepreneurial journey and now working with other people, and what I keep on reiterating to all my clients, is that everything is personal. We have our businesses and we have problems in our businesses, but they're just symptoms. We are the cause. All the roads lead back to us. Everything is personal. And so, as Jim Rohn says, you work on your job or you work on your business, you make a living. You work on yourself, you make a fortune. So I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you are having, difficulties or problems or issues in your business and you can't seem to move the needle, you're implementing all these different strategies and still you feel stuck, then maybe it's time for you to start working on yourself. So I hope that helps. Bye for now.